Well, one of the intriguing issues is the potential for symbiosis between the city and the county. Mm-hmm. And could you say something about where that's going to go and what those opportunities might be?
I speak to Rich Fitzgerald more than I speak to my family. So that's the truth. I mean, every day we talk. How can the city and the county symbiotically work together? And where is it going to go? And I'm not joking. I talk to Rich every single day. And there really hasn't been a time when you've had...
He was your first
supporter. Yep. There hasn't been a time when you've had a mayor and a county exec or county commissioners that have literally worked together since Mike DeWita, Bob Cranler, and Tom Murphy decided to do so. And if you remember that, that's when all the big development, Heinz Field, the Convention Center, PNC Park, all came together because they started working off of one list together. So Rich and I have this conversation all the time. We want to be able to combine a couple of things. Number one is sharing services at a level where we can combine our park system, our RAD park system, so that Shenley and Frick and Settlers and Boyce and all the parks that are receiving RAD money will be basically pulled together, and where they have the ability, like we've done with the Pittsburgh Parks Conservancy, to go after foundation dollars, private donations, and others in order to be able to get even more and create one of the largest park systems within the United States. We're also looking at purchasing. We're looking at creating a joint asphalt plant because the cost that we're paying for asphalt is ridiculous. We're looking at a public safety training center and putting it into a neighborhood that has seen no development at all. So there's a lot of things that work well that way. But here's why it works between Rich and I. Rich had me over his house after he won his election. He defeated Raja 2 years ago in November. He said, come on over. We live close together. And he said, so what do you want? I'm sitting in his kitchen. I said, I'm good. He goes, no, what do you want? And I think he means coffee or something. And I go, I don't know, I'm good. He goes, all right, let me tell you what I want. I want to be the guy that if something has to get done, I can pick up the phone, call the congressman, the Senate leader, the House leader, the mayor, and we can all work together to make sure it happens. What do you want? And I said, I want to rebuild Homewood. And he said, great. So there's been this competition between county exec and mayor for so many years. I'm not competing against him. I want him to build a world-class transit system. I want him to create an airport where I don't have to take 3 airplanes to get where I want to go. I want him to be able to have a workforce development and economic development strategy for this region. I want to get into the meat and potatoes of the neighborhoods and make it so that we're the anti-Detroit. It's a very strong core, a very strong heart that is the city where people want to live and they want to locate their business. So that's the biggest relationship between city and county, is that we're not trying to dance the same dance. That he's got all these things to take care of, but I got to make sure someone's trying to rebuild Homewood.
And in the back of the green shirt.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Raj Rosenblatt. I'm a retired executive director of PPG Industries Foundation.
Yes.
And during the...
Sorry I didn't have you up there. I can only fit 4.
No, we are not significant, but I think one of the best conceived programs in the 80s and 90s was that the conception and development of a cultural trust. Mm-hmm. And that was done by Paul Jenkins of the Benedum Foundation. He was the one who took a group of us, I can't remember what year it is, to Boston to see what their model was. And we did a study of models and came up with a formula for how cultural nonprofits needed to operate in order to sustain themselves. And his name should be on that slide. Okay. Or that.
I try to show that with that one slide that shows the arts, and I'm 48, so I remember what it was like beforehand.
Okay, and so I was thinking that when you talk about other segments of our needs, this idea of a trust for focusing on those areas is really a very attractive model.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I'll take that thought back to I meet regularly with the foundation community as well.
Okay.
And over here in the brown shirt.
I'm Max Gatchell. I'm a student at Carnegie Mellon University.
Could you speak up just a little bit?
I'm Max Gatchell. I'm a student at Carnegie Mellon University. You really didn't mention Seattle as an example of redevelopment, or at least public redevelopment. And Seattle has a really effective ferry system that links it with the rest of Puget Sound, so we can have good influx for the county. Could Pittsburgh possibly have some sort of ferry system on the rivers? And if so, could they link that county and city on that other section?
Yep. So, we've tried and we've subsidized it, and it still hasn't worked. The problem is we don't have enough riverfront development right now. We have one restaurant on the rivers. I mean, down by Hers Island is the only one where you can actually sit on the river, and that's just, wrong. But we have 6 riverfronts, yeah, so you would assume that we'd be able to do something more. Once we have more marinas, we have more development that's occurring. I think that that's a very real possibility. There's a proposal that's being looked at right now down by the casino, between the casino and the Carnegie Science Center, of creating a harbor, because Army Corps of Engineers is very much against using the riverfront itself for development. The Ohio River is also known as the M70. It's a maritime highway. So, and there's still a lot of traffic that's going with coal and other things. But when we create these harbors and these other ideas, and like I was talking about with the combined sewer, yeah, then there's opportunity to really be able to do it, because people then will be at the river to go to another point on the river. Seattle, I just have to mention this very quickly too. I met with former Mayor Tom Murphy, and if you haven't seen him lately, I suggest meeting with him. He looks better. He's still Tom Murphy. He's in great shape and everything, but he's really a happy guy. It's like somebody took the old Tom Murphy out and stuffed this real happy guy. And I said it to him. I just said, you're so happy. And he said, Bill, I get paid 3 times as much. I travel the world, and I have absolutely no responsibility. I went, all right. But he said this to me. He said, he speaks all over the world for the Urban Land Institute. And he said, I talk about cities. And he said, there's 4 types of cities. There's international cities. London, New York, Pittsburgh's never going to be one of those. He said, there's national cities, Philadelphia, Dallas. He said, maybe, 20 years, we do things right. We decide that's the route we want to go. There's the potential. We were there before. Maybe we can get there. He said, then right below that, there's buzz cities. He says, it's buzz cities. He said, it's Seattle, it's Austin, it's Portland. He said, your job is to get us there. He said, Luke had that opportunity. He goes, so that's where we need to be, and that's where Pittsburgh is poised. But it's not about doing things the way we did them before, and that's why I wanted to share this with you. It's how do we create the new models? How do we create the new Davy Lawrence URA, the new Davy Lawrence Allegheny Conference? Does that involve the foundation communities? Are they in at a different level? Is it the universities and the hospitals that act like frickin' Carnegie did back then in order to be able to build out the industry? Is the infrastructure not based on roads but on transit? All these different things are how Pittsburgh becomes that next city.
And the blue shirt in the back.
Hi, my name is Harold Rodakowski. I'm retired IBMer. I live in Oakland. I have this idea that if you set aside government and education jobs, that you can't have a community that is 100% service jobs. And I'm wondering, in your vision, I mean, how much should be service and how much should be production jobs?
I'm a big believer that, manufacturing hasn't left, so it's just at a different phase. I'm a big believer that if we are innovative about it, Pittsburgh could become a hub of manufacturing again. So I've never given up on that belief of it. I just don't think that it's in big steel or big something. I use this as the analogy. We'll never be able to compete against Southeast Asia and the number of voice boxes you can put into a G.I. Joe. But we can create glass that would be able to attract heat and light to be able to provide energy to a room.
But I'm wondering, do you have a 50-50? It should be 50% service, 50%?
I don't know that economic development model of where it would work. I just believe that the next phase of where this city has taken us in being able to create middle class through union jobs needs to go to the next level, and that is the service industry. We need to be able to push them up, because it doesn't make economic development sense to give people who are working 40 hours a week a salary. It's not a transitional job. The orderlies that are working at UPMC Hospital or at Allegheny General Hospital are going to work there for 25, 30 years. And to pay them $14, $15 an hour after 20 years of service, to me it's not moral. I mean, but if we can lift them up, then we don't have to have them on public subsidy. But I don't know how that mixes.
Temple?
I got until 6:30. Yeah.
Okay. Other questions? Other questions? Okay, over here.
Hi, my name's Ethan Hayes. I'm with the Hines College Master Student. I'm really interested in this problem of this bifurcation between the affluent and the low employment levels and the high employment levels with the low skilled workers. A lot of the things that I've read, like even in McKinsey, there's a McKinsey report that came out. And there's a lot of other evidence suggesting that the trends are that low-skilled work is not really recovering as well as high-skilled work. So we want to push education. We want to do all of these things. And when you look at Pittsburgh, a lot of the growth in jobs, even the last 4 years, has come from young professionals moving into the city. So your health businesses, financial services, things of that nature, your tech kind of jobs. Whereas manufacturing is barely budged, and a lot of the low-skilled jobs have barely recovered. So you have these new areas where you have a lot of money coming in, or a lot of professional money coming in, but you have these other areas where people are staying unemployed, which you talk about. But what I'm interested in your thoughts are is when we develop these new areas, when we go in, we take these old buildings and we create, maybe we can use some of that low-skilled labor to impact that. Aren't we basically kind of pushing them out of those neighborhoods because they won't be able to afford to actually live in them?
Yeah, that's a great point. Two things. Number one, ownership is always the way to defeat gentrification. So as you're doing this, you need to have a home ownership program that is a component of it. And the second part of it is you'll always see areas that are underdeveloped become hotspots, and then development occur, and then people being pushed out, mainly in business, but then another area happening. And that has to occur in a city because you don't just want to remain placid in one place. You want to see areas go. And just as a city goes up and down, different parts of a city go up and down too. So before there was any development happening in Lawrenceville, it was happening in Friendship. Before it was happening in East Liberty, it was happening in Shadyside. The best way, I don't view new development as gentrification. I only view it if somebody loses out on their business or their home, they're being told that they can't be a part of it. So providing opportunity at the outset for housing programs, for people to be able not just to fix up houses, but to be able to purchase them. And one of the big lessons we learned in East Liberty was when the high-rises were coming down, when the first high-rise was being demolished, the housing had not been completed for people to live in their neighborhood. So there was a, horrible mistake that was made. I mean, it hasn't been made again, thank God. But, the idea is that your high-rise is being taken down, but there's new housing opportunity for you within the neighborhood across the street or down the street. We fixed that by the second and third under the Murphy administration. But yeah, I agree with what you're saying. I just think that if you're in a position where you're renting, you want to see that neighborhood come back. You don't want to live next to blight. You don't want to be able to see something happen. There has to be a home ownership component to it, and that involves a lot of different issues.
Other questions? Any other questions? Over here. Joe?
I'd like to hear you talk about how much of an obstacle do you see racial conflict and barriers going forward in Pittsburgh?
It's, I really can't compare it to other cities, but I know people, especially one young minister who's raised in Baltimore, earned his degree in Philadelphia, and now preaches in Pittsburgh, who says it's the worst of the three cities. The city of Pittsburgh really doesn't have a neighborhood that is middle-class African-American. The black community has been divided out, and even in things we don't think about, like little kids' football. The kids from Homewood don't play against the kids from Bloomfield. It's cultural. It's going to take years. It's a very real situation. It's not something that's perceived or made up. The best way to do it is to be able to find more people like Justin Strong who create opportunities for people to be together. whether that is entertainment or whether that is social or whether that is corporate or whether that is religious, it doesn't matter. It's just, there's been, you know, one of the things we say about Pittsburgh is all the hills and all the valleys and the rivers give our neighborhood so much character, but they also separate us too. So my quote of it is our hills are not mountains and our rivers are not oceans. So we've got to be able to find ways to get people together. Once people get together, then their preconceived ideas sort of fade away. But right now we have very few opportunities for people to get together.
Okay, in the red, right here.
Thank you. My name is Jeff Becker. I live in Oakland, have lived all over the city for 20 plus years, graduate of Carnegie Mellon. I have two questions. I'm intrigued and agree with your comments about education, especially the importance of early childhood education. The Post-Gazette carried an opinion piece a week or so ago from a lady who's recently written about the scourge of testing and teaching to testing and how that really has eroded public education. So one question I have is, what can you really, as mayor, because the mayor doesn't have much to do with education in the city of Pittsburgh, its own board, its own budget, and so forth, to really drive that point, knowing that the investment has such a long time to pay off, but it's such an important investment to make? And two, how do you get reelected? And you mentioned that a few times in your presentation. I think it's an important point to make. While you're investing in things that have such a long payoff, you know, maybe a generational payoff, what do you do? What's your vision that can continue to inspire and gain support so that you can keep on doing this over 1, 2, or 3 terms, like Tom Murphy did, like David Lawrence did?
Great questions. All right, so the first one is, I don't think the city can lead the effort, but the city can be a partner to groups like PACey. There's the grassroots organizations that are now starting in the city, like Insercation, getting parents of students involved directly and really becoming an advocate for their causes. So that means that when I go to Harrisburg to fight for my budget, I'm also fighting for Pittsburgh Public Schools budget. And I'm not saying, well, they're there. I use my political capital to try and improve that. And I'll even go further. I'm looking for ways to